Hey, learner, you're tuning in because you want to get a grip on complex topics quickly without getting lost in the weeds, right?
Hope so.
Today, we're diving headfirst into something truly unique, Pentjak Silat, the Indonesian fighting art. Prepare to have your understanding of martial arts expanded in some fascinating ways.
And we've got a fantastic resource to guide us. It's called Pentjak Silat, the Indonesian Fighting Art, a key text from back in 1970. Howard Alexander is the main author, but with contributions from Quentin Chambers and Don F. Drager, too.
Right, 1970, so a foundational piece.
Exactly. And this isn't just, another martial arts overview. We're really aiming to pull out the core insights, the really distinctive features of this art.
Yeah, forget the usual surface level stuff. We're going deep into what makes Pentjak Silat tick, its philosophy, the surprising effectiveness of its techniques, and how deeply it's rooted in Indonesian culture.
Definitely. Expect some real aha moments. It goes way beyond the, action movie cliches.
Totally. So, our mission today, give you a solid, intriguing grasp of Pentjak Silat's unique identity, all based on what this insightful source tells us.
Okay, let's start with the name itself, Pentjak Silat. The book says it literally translates from Indonesian as to fight artfully.
Artfully.
But it immediately clarifies that's just scratching the surface. To really get it, you need to understand the two basic parts.
Two parts, got it.
So first, there's Pentjak. You can think of this as the training method. It's the system, the controlled body movements designed purely for self-defense, the practice side.
The practice, okay. Disciplined movement.
And then you have Silat, that's the application of the training, the actual fight.
The doing part.
Exactly. And the book really hammers this home. They are completely intertwined. You can't have effective Silat without good Pentjak. And, well, Pentjak without the goal of Silat is kind of pointless.
So practice and application, inseparable.
Totally inseparable.
And what's really striking, you mentioned this, is Indonesian.
Exclusively. The book states it was developed entirely by Indonesians within their archipelago. It's considered, a core part of their cultural heritage.
Wow. So when people first hear about it, they probably think, oh, is it like karate? Or taekwondo? Maybe Chinese chuan fa?
Right, the natural comparisons. And the book tackles that head on. It says those comparisons, while maybe understandable at first glance, are technically inaccurate.
How so?
Well, this whole deep dive is basically about showing those differences. But the philosophy, the application, it sets Pentjak Silat apart.
Okay. And you said self-defense is the main goal.
Primary aim, unwavering. It wasn't originally conceived as, physical education or sport, not in its orthodox form, anyway.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting for me. You mentioned weapons.
Yes. Weapons are absolutely central, not an afterthought.
So not like some arts where empty hand is the focus and weapons are secondary.
Precisely. The book stresses that a Pentjak Silat practitioner doesn't assume they'll only use empty hands. Training covers both anatomical weapons.
Your fists, elbows, knees.
Right, your natural tools. And implemental weapons, swords, sticks, knives, you name it. This integration is key.
That feels like a big difference from, say, a lot of modern karate-do styles.
It is. The source highlights that in Pentjak Silat, almost every empty hand move can be fluently and safely adapted for use with a weapon.
Huh. That's not always the case elsewhere.
Not necessarily, no. It points to a different core philosophy about, combat reality.
Okay, so what about the style itself? How does it look?
Well, a key characteristic the book mentions is its traditionally evasive nature.
Evasive. Like dodging.
Yeah, but more than just dodging. The responses are typically light, fast, often deceptive. The idea is to blend with and redirect the attacker's force, not meet it head on.
Yielding to overcome, kind of.
Exactly that idea.
No.
Flowing around the attack, creating openings. The book notes a tendency to let the attacker make the first move.
Like waiting for them.
Sort of, yeah. But it's quick to add that's not an absolute rule, more a strategic preference sometimes.
Okay, and this leads to the idea of it being a soft style.
Right, soft or elastic is how the book puts it. It's about being alert, responsive, adaptable, neutralizing aggression through that yielding and redirection.
Elastic. I like that description.
It also mentions something pretty unique, a peculiar pulsating tempo often found in the movements.
Pulsating, like a rhythm.
Yeah, almost like being coiled, ready to spring. And sometimes they apparently used percussion music in training.
Like a metronome.
Partly, yeah, but also to heighten the emotional atmosphere, like war drums, the book suggests, getting the mind right for combat.
Interesting. So where do these movements actually come from? The evasiveness, the tempo?
Good question. The book explains that almost all the movements are based on the characteristics of animals. or sometimes people in specific roles.
Animals.
Yeah, it gives examples of these really descriptive names. You have Pendeta, which means priest, or Garuda, the eagle,
Okay.
and then more action-oriented ones like Maju Kakakiri Harimau, that's taking a tiger-like stance, or Lompat Sikap Naga, jumping in dragon style.
Dragon style, tiger style.
Yeah.
Sounds very cinematic.
It does. And there's even one called Lompat Putri Bersedia, jumping like a princess and standing near.
Jumping like a princess. Doesn't sound very threatening.
But that's where the book adds a crucial point. These names can be misleading. That princess style. Apparently, the counterattacks launched from it can be incredibly fierce.
So don't judge a style by its name.
Definitely not. The appearance might suggest gentleness, but the application could be, well, quite the opposite.
Okay, let's shift to training. How do practitioners actually prepare if it's not standard PE?
Right. Well, forget your usual warm-ups. No jumping jacks, no push-ups as prep.
Really? Why not?
Because, as the book points out, real fights don't start with a warm-up routine, so Pentjak Silat training mirrors that reality.
Direct application from the start.
Exactly. They use movements that have immediate Silat value, combat application, even as preliminary exercises. General calisthenics. Considered pretty much irrelevant.
It's about building that constant readiness then.
Totally. And the book highlights the need for extreme flexibility and strength, especially in the legs and hips.
For those low stances and fluid moves.
Precisely. It mentions this is often developed just through daily Indonesian postures, like the full, deep squat people might hold. It's baked into the culture almost.
So the conditioning is very specific.
Very. And interestingly, the book even suggests some Pentjak Silat stances are more physically demanding than comparable ones in Japanese karate do.
Wow. So it's not just about looking fluid, there's serious strength involved.
Serious functional strength, yeah.
Now, is there a typical body type for this? You sometimes hear martial arts are better for smaller people.
Yeah, the book addresses that misconception directly.
How's
It
that?
says, while the art definitely suits agile fighters, many of its most renowned exponents, especially from mountainous areas like Sumatra, Java, Bali, they're actually large, powerfully built individuals.
So it's adaptable.
Very adaptable, not just for the slight and wiry.
Okay, this is maybe a good point to talk about the variety. It's not just one single Pentjak Silat, is it?
Oh, not at all. That's a key point in the book. It estimates there's something like 150 distinct styles across the Indonesian archipelago.
150. Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. And while they might share some technical basics, they've evolved differently over centuries, influenced by local customs, geography.
Like different dialects of a language.
That's a great analogy. It's a living tradition with many regional variations. The book tries to give a rough breakdown of dominant traits.
Okay, let's hear some examples.
Sure. So Sumatra, for instance, is often known for emphasizing foot and leg tactics. Styles like harimau, the tiger style we mentioned, patai, baru, kumango.
Legs first in Sumatra, what about elsewhere?
West Java tends to lean more towards hand and arm techniques. Think Cimande, Jingrik, Mustika Kuitang.
Right.
Then Central Java, you have styles like Setiahadi, which represents more of a synthesis, balancing arm and leg work.
A mix.
Yeah. And then East Java, Bali, Madura, they often combine arm and leg tactics plus grappling. Styles like Parasai Diri, Bhakti Nagara, Pamor.
Grappling too, interesting. So it covers all ranges.
It seems so, depending on the specific style. The book also notes that while it's practiced by all classes, it has a particularly strong connection to the kampong, the village people. It's really woven into community life.
And is there like a national governing body? Standard rules?
Apparently not. The book mentions a lack of national standards or a single organization for regulation back then, and it seems skeptical about efforts to turn it into a national sport.
Why skeptical?
Because doing so would likely mean losing some of that core combative reality, watering it down for competition.
Emphasizing realism for rules. Yeah, that happens.
And speaking of the core, the spiritual side is heavily emphasized in the book.
More so than in Japanese arts.
Potentially, yes. It draws a comparison, suggesting Pentjak Silat places maybe even more emphasis on the spiritual aspect than the distinction between Japanese Bugai and Budo. It's seen as absolutely integral.
So what does that mean in practice?
It talks about the importance of the fighter's soul, their heart. Some experts apparently claim they could read a trainee's inner nature just by watching them move.
Wow. Reading character through movement.
Yeah. It's presented as less activist, maybe, than some Japanese disciplines. More focus on self-perfection beyond just technique.
But it's still grounded in combat.
Right.
It's not purely philosophical.
Oh, absolutely not. The book is very clear. This spiritual depth is built on the harsh reality of deadly hand-to-hand fighting. Training incorporates real challenges, weapons, climate, terrain, time of day, building a true combative mindset.
Okay, let's dive into some of those anatomical weapons. The hands, you said there are unique formations.
Definitely. Beyond the basic fist, which they obviously use, the book details some really specialized ones.
Like what? Give us an example.
Okay, there's the arrowhead fist. It's like a standard fist, but the fingers are flexed just so to make the striking surface slightly concave or convex.
Why would you do that?
For precision, it allows very targeted strikes or thrusts to specific points, face, throat, ribs, kidneys, even back of the hand or shins. It's about hitting small, vulnerable areas effectively.
Precise. Okay, what else?
The beak hand. All fingertips and the thumb come together in a tight point, wrist flexed.
Ouch. For poking?
For fingertip strikes, yes, to sensitive spots like eyes. But also for underside cupping strikes, imagine hitting the groin around the corner, as the book says. And crucially, it's used as a hook to off-balance someone.
Hooking. Interesting. Very versatile.
It seems so. Then there's the buried thumb fist. Thumb clenched tight inside the fist.
Why bury the thumb?
The striking surface becomes the base of the thumb knuckle. It's used for powerful hooking or roundhouse blows to the sides of the neck, temples, ribs, kidneys. A very solid, compact weapon.
Okay. Any more that sound particularly vicious?
Well, there's the tiger's claw hand. Fingers and thumbs spread wide, tips flex, hand tense.
Like a claw.
Exactly. The book says it's primarily for raking or scratching. Face, throat, groin. Yeah, definitely not pleasant.
No kidding.
Then the crane fist. Fingers bent inward but not touching the palm. Thumb bent and held apart. Used for focused thrusts or strikes. Face, head, ribs, groin again. Concentrated force.
It's amazing how many ways there are just to shape the hand for impact.
It really is. And one more defensive one. The inverted reverse fist. Used when retreating from a kick, open hand swings inward, little finger edge up, then clenches into a fist right on contact, hitting with the knuckles.
Clever.
Oh.
Using the clinching motion for impact.
Yeah. Now, the book does mention hand toughening, but says it's maybe less emphasized than in some karate styles.
Why is that?
Partly because many practitioners were laborers, farmers. Their hands were already tough from daily work. And also, the focus is so much on precise targeting of vital spots. Maybe brute force conditioning was seen as less critical than accuracy.
Makes sense. Hit the right spot, you don't need a sledgehammer. Now, implemental weapons, this is a big part you said.
Huge. Unlike orthodox karate do, Pentjak Silat fully embraces a wide range of weapons, adds that layer of realism.
What kinds are we talking about?
The book groups them. Blades are a favorite, it says. You've got the pedang or long sword, the parang, which is like a machete, the very famous Indonesian kris.
The wavy one.
That's the one. And the tombak or spear. Blades are prominent.
Okay. What else besides blades?
Sticks and staffs. Shorter ones called tongkat or gada. Longer ones, 5 to 7 feet, called gala or toya, often made of rattan.
Rattan. Light but strong.
Exactly. Then you have flails. Things like chains, the rente, often with weighted ends for striking or entangling, and whips, kameti or penjit.
Chains and whips. Get exotic now.
It covers a lot. Projectile weapons, too. Bow and arrow pana and anak pana, the blowpipe, sumpit, and thrown weapons like spears, tombak, or throwing knives. Jiao.
Blowpipe.
Yeah.
Wow. And composite weapons. What's that?
The example given is the jabang. It's described as an iron truncheon, but with double tines or prongs, like a sai almost, but different construction.
So a massive arsenal.
Basically, yes. And it reinforces that core idea. In an emergency, almost anything can become a weapon in the hands of a trained practitioner. A chair, a bottle, a rock. Adaptability again.
Which leads perfectly into defending against armed attacks. That must be crucial training.
Absolutely critical. The book stresses you need to know how to deal with an armed attacker, whether you yourself are armed or empty-handed. Understanding armed combat is fundamental.
And the foundation for that is good empty hand skills.
Exactly. If you can handle an unarmed opponent effectively, those principles can be adapted to face weapons. The book gives a few brief examples from different styles, which are quite revealing.
Let's hear one.
Okay, Chingrik Method A, against maybe a knife threat. It involves a sweeping open hand catch, pulling the attacker off balance, a quick knife edge strike to the head, and then a leg trip to take them down. Fast, efficient.
Kesh, strike, trip. Seems logical.
Then there's Pummer Method A, against an overhead knife slash. This involves an open hand catch again, but then using your leg placement to control their stance. securing their weapon arm tightly under your armpit, wheeling them to the ground, and finishing with a foot stamp for control.
More controlling, less striking initially.
Right. More focused on the takedown and control.
Right.
And Mustika Kwetang Method A against a knife thrust to the belly. This one's a whirlwind. Evade, catch the wrist, rotate their arm into a wedge, forearm strike their elbow, upright fist to the face, grab their hair for control, wheel them around, and finish with a knife edge strike to the throat.
Whoa. That's a lot of steps. Very intricate.
Very. Lots of layered actions. Defense, disruption, control, counterattack.
It's fascinating how different the approaches are. Like you said, Jingrik steps in right away, Pemmer controls first.
Exactly. Those subtle differences show the depth and the distinct tactical thinking within the various styles, even for similar threats.
Okay, last big area maybe.
Yeah.
The scances, the postures, you said they're unique.
Very unique to each style. The book emphasizes that an expert can often identify a style and even predict likely attacks just by seeing the posture someone takes.
Like reading their intentions through their stance.
Precisely. It's a visual language. Now, cataloging them all would be impossible here.
Sure, 150 styles.
But the book points out regional tendencies. We mentioned Sumatra leaning towards leg tactics.
Yeah, the tiger style.
Right, Haramel. It favors very low ground-hugging stances, multiple points of support, great stability for low kicks, and explosive springing attacks, using the ground.
Makes sense for a tiger. What about other Sumatran styles?
Kumango, developed in sandy areas, tends to be more upright. Uses arm movements for distraction, slapping thighs, throwing sand, maybe setting up tricky footwork and kicks. It has a rhythmic quality that can lull the opponent.
Deceptive rhythm.
Yeah. And Patai, from the mountains, also rhythmic, dance-like. Low crouching stances, very good hand blocks against kicks, prefers higher ground if possible, legs used for blocking too. Baru, from coastal Padang, balances arm-leg but needs secure footing for its grappling.
Okay, moving over to Java.
Java generally shows a balance, but maybe leaning towards hand-arm tactics in many postures. Movements are often supple, live.
Examples.
West Java's Chimand. Less upright, cautious movements like walking on slippery ground, very flexible, good for meeting rushes with parries and simultaneous counters.
Meeting the force.
Then Mustika Kwetang, also West Java. Much more dynamic, powerful, not just evasive. Dramatic postures generate explosive force. Good arm-leg balance maybe favors arm slightly. They often toughen hands and feet for powerful, vital point strikes.
Powerful strikes.
And Shingrik, the monkey style from West Java.
Monkey style.
Yeah, it imitates a wild monkey. Primarily arm-hand focused, lots of unique acrobatics, surprise attacks, speed, leaping attacks even from sitting, going for throat, groin, clawing, biting even.
Wow, bribal.
Very. Central Java's Satyahati. Primarily leg tactics. Postures often mislead you into expecting hand attacks, then bam, powerful kicks from nowhere.
Misdirection.
Exactly. East Java's Peri Sideria has the most staccato rhythm, very upright postures, mainly hand-arm system, clever defenses, though leg tactics draw from Sumatra. Speed of hand-arm is key.
Staccato, like sharp, broken rhythm.
That's the impression. Finally, Madura and Bali. Madura styles are variable, good balance of arm, leg, grappling. Maduri's fighters are apparently widely feared. Homer's style from Madura borrows from elsewhere, focuses on deft evasion, redirecting energy, catching limbs before countering.
Catching limbs, control again.
And Bali. Fierce postures underneath, skillful fighting, balanced tactics. Bhakti Nagara is a key Balinese-style efficient forms. Skilled technicians on feet or ground, clever hand tactics, feints, distractions. Cunning.
Cunning fighters from Bali. It's an incredible spectrum. Wow, Lerner, what an incredibly rich and diverse world we've just scratched the surface of. So to try and pull it together.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We've seen Pentjak Silat isn't just fighting moves, it's a philosophy, right? Blending with force, harmonizing.
Definitely. And that deep integration of armed and unarmed combat. It's not one or the other.
Plus the huge variety. All those regional styles shaped by where and how people lived, and that strong spiritual element underneath it all.
And hopefully, learner, you had some of those aha moments. Seeing how Pentjak Silat really offers a distinct perspective on self-defense compared to maybe more familiar martial arts. Its adaptability, the way principles connect.
Yeah. Our goal was, to give you that solid overview from this classic text, surprising facts, memorable details, but hopefully without making your head spin too much.
There's obviously so much more depth there. We encourage you maybe look into some of those specific regional styles that caught your attention, or dig deeper into the philosophy behind it.
Yeah, definitely worth exploring further if it piqued your interest.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Go for it.
Perhaps the most effective defense in any situation really isn't about rigid opposition, is it? Maybe it lies more in that artful understanding, that skillful redirection of force. A principle that, probably extends way beyond just the world of Pentjak Silat.
Mm. Artful understanding and redirection. Something to chew on.